Hi, RDs. I'm Julie Davis Rogers. I use she, her, and hers pronouns, and I'm serving as the Director of Religious and Spiritual Life and Campus Chaplain
Yes.
here in the Reflection Room and at Emerson College.
Beautiful. My name is Shamika Saraki. I am the Assistant Director of Intercultural Student Affairs, and I use he, series pronouns. I asked Julie to kind of be like my co-presenter so that we can kind of just start and let you know what's up on affirming gender identity. Here we go.
All right, so I will kick us off by thinking a little bit about this theme of affirming gender identity, and particularly with my lens of spirituality and what I kind of define as like getting to know yourself on the truest level. That dovetails so well with getting to know who you are as a gendered person and where you fall within that spectrum of gender, and having the world affirm, celebrate, and recognize where we all are. So for the RDs, I'm really excited we're talking about this because you are one of the first people that students are going to get to know, and affirming their gender identity is a way to say, I see you and I know you, and here for these 4 years in college, this is a time to let that really fly and to be free. So I'm glad we're exploring this with the RDs.
Absolutely. So as Julie said, we know that this is a process, and gender and identity and all its components is a spectrum. And so what you may identify or figure out now may change, it may stay the same, but the point is hopefully creating that space and holding it for people to feel comfortable enough to say, this is who I am, and this is who I am currently. And as you get to know me, may it cause you to want to know me more and know me in deeper levels, especially as I change and I grow. So that's kind of where we're starting at with this lens and this frame, especially when it comes to affirming people as people.
So in our last segment, Jamaica was just talking about how we all are on such a journey of gender. And I think for RDs, I would also throw in, it would be really interesting to do your own self-reflection on when did you come to know who you are as a person with a particular gender identity, because I think that lends more empathy to other people's journey. But something I've learned recently has been to acknowledge that hopefully people's gender journey is changing and it's transforming, and once you know someone's pronouns, not to assume that that is a fixed part of who they are and it's not going to change over their time in college. So it's the kind of question to always incorporate into a gathering and to expect it to change, to encourage it to change. Because that's what we hope our students experience, is the continuing evolution of who they are.
And not to be confined to any of those boxes, like the binary or, whatever government markers exist. And so part of affirming this series, so you'll notice at Emerson, we actually do have what's called a name update process. And so instead of saying what's your preferred name, which sounds really weird, and updated name doesn't sound less weird, but it sounds a little bit better, right? We actually have that as a link on our website where you can actually update your name to what you want it to be. But in spaces and in gatherings, how hard is it to just ask somebody their name? That way there's no condition to it. And that's freeing to know that you just want to know what my name is, and hopefully you get it right, because that's just the basic start. Not necessarily talking about he series, she series, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and all of the gamut that could precede pronouns, but starting with the most critical proper pronoun to get Englishly and grammatical on you is someone's name, and getting it right, because you don't know how many times being a queer person of color, somebody's got my name wrong and it's on the fucking map. Okay, so let's just start there.
And it relates back to this part of being an RD, which is to know students and to be one of the first people who says, I see you, I know who you are. And this is such a simple way to do that. Absolutely. That means a lot.
For sure. And so as we continue to talk about starting with names and opening in a space, especially as you're starting to do events, and get the room more comfortable with who's in the room itself, make it a habit to kind of model using your own pronouns as well, but also acknowledge that people don't owe you their pronouns. They just don't. So for me in spaces, there are certain spaces where I do feel comfortable, I will say my pronouns. Depending on the event, I was like, yeah, I'm totally down for it. I'll let you know who I am and all of me. And there are spaces where I'm like, nah, you can have my name. And again, it goes back to let's at least start there and then add the layers on as we go, as people feel more comfortable.
Something I was telling Jamaica earlier today is how helpful the Intercultural Student Affairs website is for some really specific instructions on how to ask for pronouns in a way that actually allows students to opt into sharing them, but it opens the space to do that. So I would just pump up your website as a place to go back to remind yourself of some of these just how-to questions.
All right. Ooh, why am I not in the screen? There we go. So talking about just kind of like layering up after you kind of get the name right, yay. And then people feel comfortable sharing their pronouns, yay. Definitely the next step is to think about your own practice and thinking about using inclusive language. Do you want to kind of give examples?
Sure. So Jamaica and I were talking about what are our favorites that we use, and I've noticed I love to say peeps, which might point back to like the 1990s, but to use language that isn't just limited to people of one gender. So hey guys would be something that you might find yourself defaulting to, and to notice if you're defaulting to that. And so folks is one I hear a lot around Emerson. Peeps is one that I personally like. It's kind of weird. Yeah, Jamaica, what are some of your faves?
I'm a y'all person, so like I grew up in the South, so that's kind of what I'm accustomed to hearing. And y'all is definitely all inclusive in a lot of different languages as well. So that's kind of my favorite. If you subscribe or like become part of like gender non-conforming like groups, there's definitely some more funnier ones out there. But again, it's what people like wish for themselves. So at the end of the day, like you could always ask. But as far as inclusive language go, make it a point to realize the ways in which language is a power structure and how we can kind of deconstruct it and make it a little bit more fair for everybody else and a little bit more accessible and a little bit more freeing.
It's also kind of playful and fun. You know, I sort of like this invitation to not just default to what I grew up learning and say, oh, how can I actually express, I see all of you, you all belong here, and you all should be reading this email, or whatever it might be when I'm using that. So also to have fun with that.
Talking about messing up.
Messing up!
Lord.
So we just outlined all these different things that actually can be a lot to keep in mind when they're new ideas. And so there seems like there's only one guarantee, and that guarantee is that we will all mess up.
For sure. So like, even myself as like your assistant director, representative of LGBTQIA+ students. Wow. You know, I'm human. Everyone's human. You're gonna mess it up. It's just being conscious of that effort when you mess up and acknowledging it. Like, please don't let it like slip and be like, okay, like maybe they won't notice. Like, no.
Didn't notice, yeah.
No, for sure. Like, speaking from personal experience, when you mess up my name or you mess up like my pronouns, yeah, no, I notice, and I'm waiting for that person to acknowledge it, if they're even aware. And sometimes there are spaces where I can call somebody on the mess up, and there are some times where it's not safe to. But obviously at Emerson, as an RD and as programming goes on, part of your role, I hope, is to create that space and just kind of like call someone into a conversation, but like, actually, that's not, they go by da-da-da. Whether that's even just acknowledging their name, making sure that's pronounced right, or the pronouns itself, you're gonna mess up, and that's totally okay. But the problem becomes when you consistently mess up and don't make the effort, because that says a lot too, just as much as your silence.
And I've been thinking a bit too about how our world just needs like a lot more courage to admit, like, oops, I actually really regret that. And so as an RD, to model that, you know, when you notice I didn't do the right thing, instead of just brushing it off and pretending it didn't happen, I think that's a great thing to model, is to say, I'm thinking about that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So, that was a lot. This is one of like those longer videos, but because it needed the time and space and the energy for you to actually like learn it and take it and digest it in. But with that, if it's still like a little like hazy, a little foggy, obviously you can come talk to me, talk to Julie. Like, we're in 172 Tremont, 4th floor.
Best floor.
Best floor.
Mm-hmm.
We're so like lucky to like share spaces together
Yep.
and kind of have these conversations. And then of course like our website, Intercultural Student Affairs, there's that too. And YouTube videos, other people, like do your own research. Definitely a fan of that. And at the end of the day, you've done your research, you're like, okay, I have some more questions. Come talk to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's perfect.
So, bye.
Bye! Thanks for watching. Bring out this plant every week.
We should do our TV show. Like so fun. Oh my god, so like what are the things that you were just mentioning? Like you said in a church setting.
Yes. So I was telling Jamaica, so I used to work in a church, and when we were talking about inclusive language, a lot of times it focused on how we would say, like, sisters and brothers, welcome to blah, 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 blah. And so we started changing that to siblings was one example, family was another one, and it made me realize I forgot my favorite, which is fam. So when you're trying to talk with people, especially those that are dear to you, and if you actually want to say, you are one of my people, you belong, I think fam's a great one.
Absolutely. I definitely say hey fam a lot to my people, and that's definitely exclusively to my people. That list is like super short. So if you don't have that yet and you like want to be like my family member, like that means you need to get to know me, and
then you can be fam.
Then you can be fam. And so I think about that too as far as like language go. Like language can be very endearing and very personal and very intimate, and that's kind of like part of this process too.
Yeah.
Should I run a TV show? I'm just saying.
Did you want a TV show?
Yeah, TV show
I think
featuring
you
us.
do.
We have to get back to work now. So now that this was fun. Not that this isn't work, but I'd rather do this like all day.
Yeah, so just let us know the next topic you want to hear us talk about. We got you.
I guess it's bye now for real. Okay, bye.